Hello, welcome to another episode of the Producing Half podcast. I'm your host, Thomas, here to help all the producing, working Americans out there kind of navigate this crazy world. Continuing my series of kind of just getting a baseline on beliefs and thoughts on the world, staying away from current affairs necessarily. Just trying to give you an idea of what I think and just some pearls of my wisdom. They're kind of tainted and off-color pearls, just so you have some idea about, who I am and what I'm trying to communicate here. So today I want to talk about 401ks. And I'm a hypocrite because 401ks are a scam. Basically, they are a scam. And I have a 401k. I've had a 401k most of my producing life, mainly because I just don't understand the investment world. I've never really delved into the stock market other than, a few $100s in a Charles Schwab account, just buying cheap stocks. I did make $1,000 once on some medical stock that I bought and forgot about and went and checked it, and it went up from like $1 a share to $14 a share. Unfortunately, I didn't buy very much of it. But just not understanding how the stock market works, I didn't, I don't put a lot of money into it other than my 401k. And I actually do 10%, well, I do 6% into my 401k because my employer matches up to 6% half, so they put in 3%. And I do another 4% in an Roth IRA. I did the Roth IRA not at the beginning. I did it towards the end because, I've done it in the last few years just because I wanted some funds if I needed to have funds without paying the 10% penalty for withdrawing them. And I really don't even know if that's true, if I will get penalized for withdrawing out of a Roth IRA. But I think you can withdraw out of a Roth IRA without paying the 10% penalty. You should probably look into that, since that's why I'm putting money into a Roth IRA. I've never maxed out my 401k in a year, so, but I put 10% of my income into now. It was just into the 401k, but now it's into the 401k and the Roth IRA. But 401ks are a forced scam in my humble and limited opinion, a limited educated opinion. Just kind of, and I knew they were always, even when I didn't know why. And that's something that I've noticed over the years, is that I think people know things, they know things are right or wrong or good or bad, or they know there's an issue, even if they don't have the education to know why there is an issue. They wouldn't be able to argue it with somebody, but they know. They know there's a problem, and you can just see it today when you look at the media, and when you look at what the critical theory and race theory and all the other critical theories that come out of that theory. You just know it's wrong. You may not have the education or to be able to articulate exactly why it's wrong, but you know it's wrong. You know it in your heart it's wrong. And so I knew 401ks were wrong. I didn't really know why they were wrong at the time, 20 years ago when I started really putting money into a 401k. I just knew they were wrong. But I also didn't know what else I could do. And even back then, I wasn't even getting matched. I've only been getting matched on my 401k for like maybe the last 4 years. So it was all my money I'm putting in there. And I have a low tolerance for risk on my family's welfare. And so that makes me a little too conservative in my 401k choices because of my, I don't want to risk their, money when I pass away. Because odds are I won't ever stop working. I'll be working to the day I die, as most producers these days will. Most working Americans have no hope of retirement unless you can put that money that money you're putting in the 401k and put it to better uses. I would love to do that. I just can't seem to get to the point where I can. And like most of you, 401k is going to be my only option for saving and retiring, and it'll never have enough to retire on. For me, you need, by the time I'm retiring, and so let's say you retire at 65, still basically 20 years for me. Who knows what it'll take to survive in this world? So 401k is for me and it's for you. So, but we need to know why it's a scam and start maybe as a people, or at least as a future generation, since I kind of do these for my children, to know what, not to waste a bunch of money in them. I would still, even today, knowing what I know about them, I would still probably put money in a 401k up to what the employer matches. I think I would still do that, even everything I know, because until I figure out a better thing to do with that money, that's what I would do. It's hard to give up free money. It's not free money, by the way. It's just it's a scam, because employers, they've done these stats on these in these surveys. Employers pay on average, I think, $1 or 1% less, or $1 less. They pay less. I forget the stat, but they pay less to when they have 401k match. So your salary is a little less. So you get a little bit more income because they're matching. It's probably dollar for dollar. It's probably, they match 1%. Your income's 1% less. What they offer as a salary overall, the entire industry. So why are 401ks mostly a scam, and a forced scam at that, since what other option do you really have? Well, first is they have limited, this is what frustrates me, and really kind of what got me thinking about the whole 401k thing, is that your investment options are crummy. Because when I would read about investments that I would like to actually risk my money at, and then I go to my 401k, it's not there. There's like 20 choices, and I may be exaggerating that, of what you can do with your money in a 401k. And who picked that? And I didn't pick that. And so my corporation's 401k manager picked those investment options, and how did he pick them? Why did he get to pick what I'm going to do with my retirement money, supposedly? So just the fact that you have no real options to invest the money how you'd want to invest it based upon your morality, based upon your culture, based upon your risk reward tolerance, just based on a lot of things, your expertise. I know a lot about a very few subjects. I know a little bit about a lot of subjects, but a lot about, very few subjects. So maybe I want to invest in the things that I know a lot about, but I can't, because it's not one of the options in my 401k plan manager. The money is trapped there during the most expensive time of your life, when you're trying to have children and buy a house, and you need cars and diapers, and you're growing a family. And during that time, the most expensive time of your life, your money is trapped, because if you try to take that money out before you're 59 and a half years old, you're going to pay not only the taxes on that money, but you're also going to pay a 10% penalty. Why? Because you dared take your money out of the Ponzi scam of the stock market. Since you dared take your money out of their stock market, they're going to charge you a 10% penalty for no reason. How is that legal? How can they legally charge you a 10% penalty because you took your money out that you put in there and you saved? It makes no sense to me, and is extremely disingenuous and infuriating to me. There's no income distributions. If I was going to, in 401ks, do you get a check for all your investments in your 401k? No, you don't. If I was going to put money in the stock market and leave it there for a long, long time, I would probably put it in dividend stocks that pay a dividend is what I would do with that money, because then you have some sort of income, and you can reinvest the dividend so that it's then that money that you would have gotten paid is going back into your investment. That's fine, but at least there's some income being generated, and to me, an asset generates income. And you could just lose all your money. It's the stock market. I'm in my lifetime, I have seen it crash. I've seen it completely crash. And you read all the experts, whatever that may mean, and they all say that it can collapse again Anytime now. It's a totally, it's a huge balloon. It's inflated. You start looking into the derivatives markets, the unfunded derivatives out there of more money than exists on Earth, and it's all just a house of cards that could collapse, and you can lose your entire savings, everything, and you have no choice in it. I know whenever Biden was getting to be president, I moved my money around in my 401k to the safest options I had. I took them out of the stocks, that took it out. Well, I mean, there's really no safe option. They don't give you anything safe. Although I do have a guaranteed interest fund in my 401k, but you should only park money in there temporarily. It's like a cash equivalent type thing where you're technically not supposed to lose money at it, but you don't gain anything either. So you lose money at inflation rate. But your money is just locked. Your money is on this. You can just lose it at any time. It's just gone. I mean, think about it. I remember sitting in front of a guy who was trying to purchase a house, and he was an older gentleman. Should have already been retired, and he was. His but he had to go back to work, and now he needed a house because he lost his home. Why did he lose his home? Why was he back to work? It's because his 401k was managed by Enron, and he was a millionaire. And not like a millionaire like he worked in an office, a millionaire as he was out there in the oil rigs, working calloused hands, but he invested all his as much as he could, and he maxed out his 401k every year, employer match. But a lot of his 401k, I guess, was tied to Enron stock. So when Enron collapsed, he lost all his money. And so now he went from being retired with, I think he had like 2 point something million. It's not a ton of money for all you wealthy people, but for somebody like him and me, it was a retirement, a nest egg that he was going to live the rest of, maybe he had 10, 15 years left in his life. He was going to live them out just, on his house and his little ranch that he had. He had like 10 acres. Lost it all because his 401k went away in an instant. All gone. And one of the biggest, another big thing that I don't like about 401ks is you can't invest in real estate. I mean, there is no, and in my 401k, there's no like even an ETF or any kind of like fund that's based upon real estate. But real estate is where wealth is built. So if you want to know how to get wealthy, then it's real estate. That's it. I mean, you just solved it all. You now know how to generate wealth. You don't have to go to fancy school. You need to own real estate. And ultimately, you'd like to own income generating real estate. But any real estate, really. God's not making too much more of it unless you're, I guess, in Hawaii. He's making some there occasionally. But other than that, all the real estate that is, and it's going in value. I was just talking to somebody today, actually, and she was saying that their starter home that they bought back in the early 2000s, bought it for like $133,000. I want to say it was a Horton, whoever makes those, a Horton home, something Horton. Anyways, it just sold for $700,000. It's just a small starter home. They made no repairs to it, no renovations, nothing. It's just a starter home, just a normal home you would buy when you were starting your life out with a family. And it sold in Austin for like $600,000. It's not even in a good neighborhood. That's how you make wealth is real estate. Now, mortgages and homes is not the greatest investment. Generally speaking, they're not a good investment. But that's how Americans generate wealth, I guess, is through their equity in their home. But you want income producing real estate. I mean, that's how you truly build wealth. I knew this guy once, and he was so dumb. I mean, you don't ever want to say that about somebody, but he was dumb. Could barely read, barely write. He was ironically the office manager, and you'd send him an email, and then he'd come and ask questions about it. Like, did you not? It was not a complicated email. You just need to read it. And I think the manager at the time that we all worked for just kept him around as a whipping boy because he was so mean to him. I mean, the guy just took it. I mean, he was just abusive, really, to this poor guy. And the guy was annoying in the fact that he couldn't do anything on his own. He couldn't figure out anything out. He was just really, really dumb. And I remember thinking that so often, like, man, this guy's so dumb. How's he ever going to get through life? I mean, he wasn't making anything. They paid like $22,000 a year, 24,000 I think is what they paid. So he wasn't making any money. He's just a really, really dumb guy. And I have not, he may be one of the, I may be able to count on one hand people I thought, all right, this person is truly just a dumb person. They just don't have the ability to learn. I meet a lot of ignorant people. You'd call them stupid, but they still have the ability to learn. They just haven't. That's why I hate those man on the street things where they go and they'll show them a picture of Condoleezza Rice or Alan Greenspan, and they'll be like, well, who's this guy? And they just stand there like, oh, I don't know who that is. And they make fun of them, like Jimmy Kimball and them do that. And then they'll make fun of them because of how stupid they are. They didn't know something. And I'm like, man, that person that you're making fun of knows 1,000 things that you don't know. Probably 10,000 things you don't know. They know what a gallon of milk cost. They know which grocery stores have double coupons. They know how to feed a family of 4 on $20 for a week. Well, that might be a stretch these days. But I'm just saying, they know things differently in their world that you don't know. But just because they don't know this knowledge that these elites think you should know, then they're stupid and dumb, and we should make fun of them. I hate those men on the street. I call them stump the chump kind of things, where they just want to ask you some stupid question and make fun of you because you don't know it. But that's not true. Those people could know. Most of those people could know all those things. It's just not in their life. It's not important to their life. What's important to their life is feeding their families and going to work and their health and just trying to get by in this crazy world. But so anyways, this almost lost where I was going with that. But anyways, this guy was really dumb. So anyways, he's doing his taxes one day and he can't figure it out. And he's like, can you come help me do my taxes? And I don't like to do taxes. I'm no tax expert. At that time, I just filed a basic 1040. It's a 2-page form. It's pretty easy. So anyways, I go in and to help him do his taxes. And I tell you, when I finished with his taxes, I left a very humble person and realized that between the two of us, I was the frickin' idiot. I was the dumb one, and still am. I'm sure he's probably retired now and living the life. You see, he wasn't very bright when it came to, reading comprehension, maybe. He couldn't. He had no reading comprehension. He couldn't learn any new technical things. He couldn't do math very well. But what he could do was home renovation. What he could do was collect rents. You get it. He owned things. He took every penny he ever made and he bought properties. Cheap properties too, just whatever it was. And then he would take those properties and he was broke. I was like, man, this guy's broke. He never has any money because he never took any money out of any of these properties. He just reinvested it in them to pay off their mortgage. Basically, he had tenants at all times paying all his mortgages. And it was a struggle for him because if he lost the tenant, he couldn't pay the mortgage. So there was lots of times he was close to foreclosure. His credit wasn't good. He had a bank that understood how he worked, a little mom and pop bank, I want to say it was a credit fund, Yeah, I don't know. It was just a little local bank. I think it only had 1 or 2 branches. And so they worked with him. Even though he had a lot of missed payments on his mortgages and stuff, they worked with him and he could still get these mortgages. And when I was doing his taxes, he had multiple properties, including a small apartment complex. The guy was, on paper, a millionaire, working at a job making $24,000 a year. He didn't have a lot of net income, but he had a lot of cash flow going back into those properties. But by now, it's been 20 years. The guy is probably has it all paid off, or he's even grown it, and he's produced assets that'll feed his children and his grandchildren. So I went and sat in my office after helping him with his taxes and stared at the wall, and I never once called him. I always treated him differently after that, and I was always a little bit more patient with him. I mean, he was still dumb, still had the inability to learn anything in the business world as far as reading anything at all and understanding what he was reading and doing anything with it. But I'll be working to the day I die, and he's probably retired. So I'm the idiot. Trust me. So that's where the wealth is in real estate, and you have no access to it as a in your 401k. So all that money you're saving, you think you're saving in retirement. Who's really making money off of that? You think it's you? What do you think all that trillions of dollars that go into 401k? Who's managing it? Well, 401k managers, big hedge fund type people. They're managing trillions of dollars, billions of dollars, whatever it is. What do you think they use your money for? They leverage all that money. They leverage those 401ks to move the market however they move it with their own money. They they use your money to make money. That's just the fact. I don't. The whole thing is such a scam. You know what 401ks? Well, there was something called the Pension Protection Act that that's when it really 401k really became a thing, because 401ks were originally kind of like a small incentive for like stock options or something to give your kind of like that to give your employee a little bit of a tax deferred. It's kind of an employer thing. And then eventually it got to where you could opt in as an employee. The IRS changed the tax code, and employees could start doing it. And then there was this, all the pensions started, having issues, and then they passed the Pension Protection Act, and that's when 401ks really became a thing. That's when all these pensions were moved into 401ks. So what they did is they took the liability of your retirement. They took it off of all these employers, off all these big trillion-dollar companies that get all these bailouts and keep making all these money. And again, I'm not against. I hope everybody has a billion-dollar company, but I want you to do it honestly, without this crony capitalism oligarchy where all the laws are written so that you don't have to pay this taxes, you get this break, or you get funded by this, you don't have to pay postage, whatever it may be. It's not real capitalism. It's just government subsidies for their billionaire friends. So anyways, these 401k, these pensions became 401k. So what they did to you, the American working class, you producers out there, is that they transferred the burden of your retirement off of them and put it on you, which I'm not necessarily against. That's kind of the American culture. You're an individual. You're responsible for yourself. But still, they took that future of you of being able to put in 20, 30 years and retire and live the last 20 years of your life in luxury, not luxury, but well off, spending time with your family, doing what you want. They took that burden off of them, and then they put it on you. And they put it on you in such a way that actually generates income for them, because they can make money off of all that as well. So that's a huge, huge scams. Another thing I have against 401ks is the fees associated with it. So let's say let's say you make 6% on average return on your 401k. Well, you throw in 2 to 3% fees with 3% inflation, and nowadays 3% inflation is probably a joke. It's I don't know if you went out there and seen prices. Hell, I think I saw a quote from Warren Buffett start talking about inflation. When Warren Buffett starts talking about inflation, it's real. So you throw in 3%, which is, again, a joke these days. Throw in 3% inflation with a 2 or 3% fees. You're just, all you're doing is keeping pace. You're not really making money. You're just keeping pace. Inflation is an insidious tax on the poor. It's insidious. And it's something that people don't understand. And it's how so much of your wealth and your future and your children, your grandchildren's future is just stolen from you is through inflation. So you throw in these fees, and then you lock this money away until you're 60 something years old, 59 and a half. Let's say you take it out that moment, you're 59 and a half. All this money's locked out. Well, another just dire fact, just a horrific fact, is that it is taxed as ordinary income. It's just taxed as income. You're like, well, what does that matter? Well, it matters because what is your tax rate going to be when you retire? So let's say I try to get my 401k out in 20 years from now. What is the tax rate going to be? You think it's going to go down now that the Democrats are in charge of everything? Don't get me wrong. Republicans are just Democrats going the speed limit. They're just maybe they're the Democrats on the slow lane. but there's the difference between Democrats is just what lane in this progressive highway we are. Democrats are in the fast lane, and the Republicans are in the slow lane, going the speed limit, and the Democrats are speeding to oblivion. So don't get me wrong when I'm saying that but the Democrats are known for wanting to raise taxes, and the Republicans are known for not wanting to raise them. So what's the tax rate when you're going to be? This ordinary income, this long-term investment. Some key there, because long-term investment matters when you talk about income and taxes. These long-term investments are going to be taxed as ordinary income. Let's say you live in a state that has state tax. Well, then it's taxed state tax-wide, state tax as well as normal income. So you're going to pay all these tax. If you're paying, now let's say you're in the 20-something% tax bracket. Well, by the time that, you might be in the 30 or 40% tax bracket. Tax brackets in America have been in the 90% range before. And for years, and when I say years, I mean decades, the highest tax brackets were in the 70% range. So tax brackets have been gigantic. I was talking to this old rich guy that used to work for me, just a workaholic kind of guy, and he was telling me about whenever he was making a lot of money, a lot of income, that you could depreciate you could do a purchase and depreciate it all in 1 year. So they when it came close to the end of the year, they were buying Rolls Royces and stuff, and then they just depreciate them all at once. They were doing all kinds of things because the tax rate was so high. They'd rather just go spend the money on something, and then at least they'd have that something to show for, instead of just handing their money away to the federal government. So then they would just go spend it on something and then appreciate it, because the tax rate was, for people like him, were like 70% tax rate, which is just, imagine that. I mean, already we work to May. So what is it? Right about now, we're starting to work for ourselves. This entire time you've been working for all those people you've seen in the grocery store who pulled in with a nicer car than you. They had a better car than you. They have a bunch of children, sure, whatever, but they pull in with a nicer car to you. Their basket is full of meat, like good meat and name brand stuff, and you've got your coupons, and you've got the generic grocery store hamburger meat, and you've got all just generic stuff and just the basics, and they whip out their food stamps or whatever they call it these days, EBT or whatever, their benefit card, and they pay for all that, and they're all able-bodied looking people, and they get back in their nicer car than you, and they drive away. Well, you work until May for that person. You're working until May for them, and for all the foreign wars where we give millions of dollars to Pakistan or something for gender studies, and rebuild some school in Afghanistan that'll just get blown up as soon as we leave, because that's just how those cultures are. You're not going to go out there and put our culture, force our way of life on a people that don't want it. It's not going to happen. So you're working to May for all that. So what's that tax rate going to be whenever you actually do retire? What's it going to end up being? You have no idea. That's a huge roll of the dice. One of the biggest negatives. I heard, I don't know if y'all know who Grant Cardone is. I like watching his YouTube videos because they're funny, and he's kind of aggressive. I always have a problem with people who teach sales. I can sell. I've been in sales most of my life, but I don't like it, and I do it. If I'm forced to do it, it's forced, and it's not a passion of mine. But I always kind of suspicious of people who teach sales, because if you can sell, you sell. If you can't sell, you teach selling. I mean, a lot of people I know who teach selling, they can't sell. And it's not that they can't sell, they can. And I'm sure Grant is too. And I'm sure he is 100% a badass all the way around. But the people who teach sales, they don't have the high tolerance for the repetitive. So they may be great salesmen. You may be able to throw them into any kind of selling situation, and they could outsell you in that situation. But I find that they don't have the tolerance for the repetitive, and that's what it makes a true great salesman. Being able to grind it out day in and day out, to be able to put on that show, such a great show at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, at the beginning of the week and at the end of the week, and at the beginning of the month and at the end of the month, and at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. They just grind it. And I'll take a B salesman any day of the week, who's willing to grind it out constantly and just put a constant effort into it. And that's how I was successful in sales, by the way, because I don't know if you know this, I'm not a very likable person. I kind of don't like people, and it comes across. But I just grinded it. I just outworked everybody. I just got in front of more people. I knew I couldn't sell as good as the guy over there who just had a smooth smile and just always the gift for gab. I don't like to talk, which is ironic that I'm doing a podcast. But I just outworked them. Anyway, so back to Grant Cardone. I went off on a side tangent. He said, I heard him say once that the 401k is merely where you kiss your money away for 40 years and hope it's growing, hoping it grows up. And, you take people like Grant is truly a wealthy person and truly successful in what he does. And he knows that the thing that makes money is real estate. I've seen some of his videos, and I know that he really focuses on real estate. As a matter of fact, I think he rents. He doesn't even like to own where he lives. He likes to rent where he lives because he doesn't want to waste. If he owns something, he wants it making him income. I'm not sure how that mathematically works out because you're spending the money anyway, so I'm not sure how that works. I did write down a quote by another guy. This was from James Altucher, Altucher. He's the guy. I've seen him online, but he's the guy. I think he worked at HBO and like an IT. I think he left there, started a little company. He sold something to Salesforce and made a bunch of money, but he also managed a lot of hedge funds. He managed mutual funds and hedge funds and stuff, and he knows what he's talking about when it comes to the stock market. And he had said that 401ks are scams. This is another $1 trillion industry that has a lot of money at stake if people stop believing in the mythology bolted to the scam. Then there is revenue sharing between employers and 401k plan managers. Is this legal? Yes. That was his big thing, is that you're giving them your money to manage, and the employer is making money off of that money. So then you could say they're making money off the employer match. So is the employer match really a big deal to them? Who knows? But, I like to look at people who are successful and kind of steal. That's what I always tell new people who are getting in any kind of industry, sales industry or whatever, is like, don't reinvent the wheel. Look at somebody who's successful and just steal everything they do. Until you've been in the sales game for a long, long, long time, you need to not ever think. I don't like to see, whenever I was running a sales organization, I didn't really necessarily like to hire really independent thinkers who were super, super smart. Always wanted to analyze everything. I wanted the young kid who knew he didn't know anything and just wanted to be told what to do and how to do it. Those are the ones who always made the most money because they just did what they were told and didn't ask a lot of questions. And if you just follow a good selling system, then you can sell. Sales has a real negative connotation to it, and it's a lot deserved, but I haven't worked with too many sleazy people, and they just don't last long. People who are dishonest just don't last long in the industries that I've worked in anyways. They're always isolated, found out, and kind of shunned away because nobody wants to. If they're like that with a customer, then they're like that with the employer and also their fellow employees. So they come and go, but they just don't. The problem is they come and go and they go somewhere else, and so customers are still running into these sleazeballs. But every successful salesperson I have worked with genuinely wants to do right by the customer. They want to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with making money as a salesperson, but they also generally want to do right by the customer. So salespeople have a negative. They look at people, maybe used car sales, but I've never been those or worked with those. Maybe they are all bad people. Who knows? But salespeople do have a bad rep, and it's not necessarily deserved. Anyways, back to what I was saying. 401ks also cost employers less. That's why they also wanted to switch away from pensions. Pensions could have been a asset to employers. They could have been investing the money wisely, but they ended up raiding them all the time, and it was a big deal. But pensions allowed people to work 30 years and then retire and leave something. You know what it did? It built wealth for the middle class, and that's why it had to go away. There's nothing that the elites who want, the progressives, want to get rid of more is a middle class, a wealthy middle class. A wealthy middle class, this is extremely important. You got to research this and to understand it. And I've only come to this conclusion recently. A wealthy middle class is the key to a free people. It is the wealthy middle class. You got to have an elite. In the beginning, you need an elite class who's liberal, and not the term that we call liberal, which is leftist, but truly and liberal in that the rights of the individual, the Bill of Rights, basically, that type of liberal who believes in that, not the liberal these days who are all leftists and want us all to, die in communism and socialism. But getting away from pensions and 401k is a great way to prevent the middle class from becoming a little, making them fund themselves, slow down their wealth building. There's positives to 401ks. I mean, I use them, so there's definitely positives for me. They're easy to use, man. They are super easy. You could pay. I don't, but I know every employer I've worked with is given the option to pay your 401k. In other words, you put your money in there, and then the 401k, say Fidelity, will manage it for you, invest it, and change the investments as you get older, and you pay for that privilege for them doing that. And I don't do it because you don't make enough, even with a 8 or 9% return on your 401k. Throw in inflation, and then all the fees of them managing it, added on top of the fees that are in the funds that they're invested in, and you're just not making any money. It's just not. The matching is a huge positive to me. I've seen the people who dispute that, and I believe them, but it's just that it's hard to turn. It's the same reason why nobody understands the cost of all the quantitative easing and all the bailouts and it's too far down the road. So it's hard to see why matching is not a positive, because the why it's not a positive is too far down the road. So I think the matching is a positive. You're reducing a very small amount, but you are reducing your tax burden on the income, because it's 401k generally are pre-tax dollars. So it lowers your income a little bit, and so you're taxed a little less on your income right now. And also the taxes on let's say you do well in your 401k, all that growth taxes are deferred as well. So you're not paying taxes on the growth of your 401k. So that's a huge positive as well. But that's about it. That's all I can think of for positives. Let's go back to the negatives. This is where I said earlier that long-term investments is an important phrase, because my understanding, my ignorant, limited understanding of investments is long-term investments are generally taxed between 0 to 20%. So let's say you invested long-term in the stock market. Let's say you make $200,000 a year, and you're able to invest over the course of a 30-year work life. You're able to get, maybe you're able to get $2 or $3 million in your 401k. Or let's say $5 million. So that $5 million, when you decide to retire, is taxed as if it was an investment, would be taxed at 0 to 20%, depending on where it all fell into. But as ordinary income, it's going to be taxed as ordinary income. And again, you have no idea what that's going to be when you retire. That could be a lot. It could be a huge hit. It could be as much as half of your 401k disappearing in an instant. Now, I know there's lots of tax people who are going to argue the semantics of all that. No, it's not. You're going to take out payments, and you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and your tax liability is going to be that. Whatever. I don't know. But I have read many of blogs where people have said that what I'm saying is basically accurate, unless you get into the fine detail of it all and hire somebody who really knows what they're doing. And when you've got $300,000 in your 401k, you're not going to be hiring somebody when you go to retire. And the average person, by the way, the average amount of money, I thought I had a chart. I might not have printed it out that showed how much money was in the average 401ks, and it was super, super low. Like 186,000 was your average retirement age person's 401k balance. What are you going to do with that? 2 or 3? No, it's nothing. It's nothing. You're not going to retire with that. You're going to be working still. So, people are saving, but they're not. They're not. There's not going to be enough money in a 401k for you to retire for the most of people, unless you're a high earning person. Maybe if you make $400,000 or $500,000, you can put enough in your 401k over the course of 20 to 30 years that you'll actually have in retirement. But let's surmise the negatives. Let's sum them up. That money's trapped during the time when you need it. That's a negative. The employer match, you get paid less, so that's kind of a wash. You get the employer match, but then you're paid less, probably dollar for dollar. The vesting is kind of a tricky thing because maybe they match, but you got to stay there 4 or 5 or 6 years, and they know the average employee only stays for this many years, so there really is no. So that is actually a negative because then they get away with paying you less because they have a match, but they know they're never going to have to give you the match. They're going to get that money back because the odds are is that they're going to get most of that money back because of how often people stay in the jobs and how often they change. It's not income. 401k, money you're putting in a 401k is not income, and that's huge. If you were putting it in real estate, you'd be putting it and you'd get income from it. That's a huge negative. Your options being so limited and controlled by people who have no interest in you and do not care about what's going to happen to you and your family and your wealth and your retirement. It's paper money. It's not real. It's in the Ponzi scam of the stock market that can collapse any second. If you are investing in real estate, you have something you can go touch. It's a real asset. It's a true asset. It's not a paper asset. Not some sort of, it's like when people buy gold and silver, but they buy it on the ETFs or something. Well, you don't own gold and silver. And if you look at some of the COMEX blogs and read that, you know that more silver is bought and sold on paper than exists on Earth ever. So how is that going to end up being? Silver shorted so much that it should be worth like $100 an ounce, but I think that it might collapse some of these big banks if they ever let it go to its true, because it's such a weird thing that they do where they sell more than exists. I don't know. I don't understand it, but I know it's definitely a scam. The unknown tax rate, especially the way this looks like this country's going, man, that's going to be a huge negative. That might wash everything. You would have been better off not doing a 401k just on that unknown tax rate. All the large and hidden fees. I know everybody who I work with lets the 401k manager manage their funds. And they make a little bit more than me, I bet, but not when you throw in the fees, the hidden fees that they have to pay for that. So that's a huge one. It's tied to the stock market again. That's a huge negative. The fact that the stock market can collapse any second. You know what? If you ever try to change employers, that can be a huge issue as well. Changing employers, moving the 401k, and is it hard? Can you roll it over? Do you have to put it into something else? Will your new employer let you roll it into their thing? It's just that's when it becomes a huge burden on you trying to navigate. And if you do it wrong, you owe the taxes and you owe the penalty. And it's easy to do it wrong. I saw an article of this guy, and this explains how insane this is. This guy was Robinhood is. Stay away from the Robinhood app. But anyways, they were giving this guy who had no idea what he was doing huge amounts of leverage, and he was buying and selling stocks, huge amounts of options, I think, and he was losing money and making money and losing money and making money, but he was doing it really rapidly. And in the end, I think he ended up making over the course of a year like $20,000 on the high side. Like he came out at $20,000 up over the year. So to me, that's a freaking huge success. He made 20 grand in a year on the stock market. I've made $2,000 in a year in the stock market when I was doing it myself. So yeah, guys, huge. But he was doing huge things. Like he was big money. And he didn't have. He was the 20-something with no money. I don't understand why Robinhood would give this guy such huge money to play with. Anyways, there's some weird rule where if you buy and sell assets too quickly, you don't get to write off the losses. Don't go against your earnings. So even though he was selling them at losses and buying them back at, or buying them and selling them at losses and buying them back and just moving it, none of the negatives counted. So only the positives counted. And he was going to owe off that $20,000 of income he made. He was going to owe like $400,000 in taxes. I saw that article and I was like, man, that says you everything. They do not want people, they don't want the middle class. They want to get rid of the middle class. The progressives want to get rid of the middle class. The middle class, a wealthy middle class, is the most dangerous thing to these leftists who want to take us down the road of socialism and communism. It's democracy. Democracy is not a good thing. It's not a bad thing, but it's not a good thing. You can look at a lot of countries that killed a lot of people, murdered their own citizens, and did a lot of evil things that were democracies. There's no difference to me being ruled by a dictator or being ruled by 51%. You get what I mean? Democracies are not the greatest. You need a limited democracy or a constitutional republic. You need something to limit the power of the people. But middle class is a wealthy middle class is what prevents nations from going down that rabbit hole of socialism and communism and leftism. The last thing that I don't that makes me know that 401ks are a scam is wealthy people don't do it. Wealthy people do not participate in 401ks. It's not something that any wealthy person does. That tells you everything. The wealthy don't do them. The wealthy have no interest in 401ks. They recognize them for what they are. I know I'm being a hypocrite because I do a 401k. I'm right there with y'all. I've got my 10% going into my 6% my 401k and 4% my Roth IRA. Again, the Roth is new. So for a while there, it was just all 10% going into my 401k. And my investments in my 401k are way too conservative. So I'm not making the money I should be making because I don't trust the stock market. So I don't have a high tolerance for risking, my only asset I have other than my house, but that house is not an asset. And I have a mortgage and taxes on it. I mean, you think you owe something and own a house in America, stop paying your taxes, see how fast you own it. It's another thing they're doing to destroy the middle classes. They tax you to oblivion. I pay so much in taxes on this house. It's so ridiculous. And for what? Our public education is a sad joke. It's freaking horrific. I should do a podcast on how horrible, just in my experiences and what I've seen of the public education is. Wait a minute. Did I do one education? Anyways, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Producing Half podcast, where a producer, a worker, just an average, ordinary American goes through, just the things that make America America, and we try to navigate this crazy world. Again, thank you, and I will see you again soon.